We cannot find and derive pure philosophical cognition from that which is wholly external to the subject, nor can we find it in that which is wholly internal to the subject. He calls the former physics, right, that's the realm of physics, the latter, that's the realm of empirical psychology, and Kant denies both, right? He says if we are contextualizing our discussion within an attempt to arrive at pure philosophical cognition, then let's not look at physics, and let's also not look at empirical psychology. Okay, so the question becomes then, well, where do we find it, right? If it's not in physics, if it's not in the world outside of the subject, and it's also not to be found within or derived from the world wholly internal to the subject, then where can it be found? And Kant says that it must be derived from the a priori. And I'll talk briefly about the a priori, but I've done a video on this as well. So we find this, right? We find pure philosophical cognition. This is being pure philosophical cognition. It must be derived from the right? It must be derived from the a priori. Alright, so this concept, philosophical cognition, and our articulation, Kant's specific articulation of, and this is just the beginning, right, of the pure philosophical cognition must be, according to Kant, derived from the a priori. I think I have a link. Yeah, I have a link. So just click the link in the PDF, and it'll take you to my videos on David Hume. I do a pretty thorough explanation. There's a lot of sort of background information needed in order to fully understand Kant. And I would recommend that you watch the videos because they do explain it. It is explained pretty clearly, hopefully. With respect to Kant, there's a distinction between what are a priori claims and a posteriori claims. And I'll go through that a little bit in this video, but most of that information has been given already. Click the video if you want to know more, the link to the video, if you want to know more about the a priori specifically. Technically speaking, the a priori is true by definition, right? It's a truth that we arrive at, and we know that it is true by the definition, right? Also, this truth, by definition, is independent to experience. It is not contingent. The truth of the thing, the statement, for example, in the video I do, the cat is on the hat, the cat is on the mat, the cat is on the hat is like Alice in Wonderland or something, right? But the cat is on the mat is true, but its truth is dependent on experience. If I want to talk about something which is independent to experience, I don't need to see a cat on the mat, then I can use the example that I use as a bachelor is an unmarried man. The truth of that claim, a bachelor is an unmarried man, does not require me to know any specific bachelor for it to be true. It is true by the definition. And that's what an a priori claim is, right? An a priori claim is a truth that is true by definition and independent to experience. If you don't have a good understanding of the distinction between synthetic, analytic, a priori, a posteriori, it says right there, I have more detailed video on the a priori. Click here. Just click that link, watch those 3 videos. It's maybe 30-40 minutes worth of instruction, and you should have a pretty solid understanding. Come back and then pick up on the next point, and you'll have a good understanding of what we're discussing, right? So in this first part, right, what Kant is saying, he's telling you, basically giving you the scope of his analysis. The scope of his analysis is not going to be concerned with a metaphysical description of that which is external to the subject, right? We're not going to be able to derive pure philosophical cognition here. We're also not going to be able to derive pure philosophical cognition here, right? It's not going to be completely external to the subject. It's not going to be completely internal to the subject. Where is it going to be? It's going to be devoid of the subject. It's going to be devoid of our embodiment, right? Because the second, and I don't want to jump the gun too much, but the second that we embody this information, right? The second that it's embodied within a person, right? The one thing that they share is embodiment. Right? It's been embodied. The one thing that Kant would say on a sort of a very general level, this is an introduction, this is the first paragraph of the Prolegomena, is that the second that we embody it, well, the question is why use the word pure, right? Pure philosophical cognition, right? In a sense, what you should have some sense of is that there's something unpure, to be really, really ghetto, right? But there's something unpure about this embodiment. There's something that we lose with respect to our discussion of the philosophical cognition and our ability to cognize. There's something that's lost or contaminated in a sense with embodiment, right? Because obviously, if he says, and he does say, and I'm not going to sort of jump the gun yet, but just at this introductory level, that it must be derived from the a priori, this pure philosophical conception, and we recognize that the a priori is independent to experience, right? Then we see that our embodiment is, in a sense, antithetical, at least at this level, antithetical to that concept, right? Our embodiment is within experience, right? So what is Kant talking about, right? That might be a question that you might ask, right? Well, is he talking about some other world? Is he talking, what is he talking about, right? Is it transcendental? Is it not this world? What sense is to be made of this? And these are all valid, good questions at this stage of the game. All of these questions will be addressed and answered, hopefully, as we progress through the series. But this is sort of what Kant is doing at this point. Okay. The next thing is his discussion on the distinctions between pure and empirical knowledge. So I want to cover that part. Kant makes a distinction between two things, but in the Prolegomena he refers back to the critique of pure reason, and this is what I said in my opening statements on Kant's Prolegomena, is that it would help if you have read the critique of pure reason. You don't necessarily have to read the critique of pure reason, because what I'm going to do for you to make your learning of the Prolegomena easier is I'm going to, I referenced and I went back and did some cross-referencing, pulled up the section in the critique of pure reason that he references in the Prolegomena, and I'm going to present you the information that he has presented in the critique. So he cites the critique in the Prolegomena, and I'm going to tell you what he says in the critique, right? So what exactly, what sense can be made of this idea, this attempt to attain pure philosophical cognition? Well, let's look back to what he says in the critique of pure reason. In the critique of pure reason, Kant says, first claim, knowledge, K-N-O-W. Knowledge begins begins with, he says that knowledge begins, right? Knowledge begins with experience, right? We begin our knowledge with experience. It's very, very important that we make a distinction here, right? And this is somewhat semantic, but there shouldn't be any confusion. If you're following along closely, it was just the case that I just said, not that I said, but that Kant just said, that we cannot derive our knowledge, right, of the, sorry, wrong way. We cannot derive our knowledge, derived externally, E-X-T-E-R, right? We just said that we cannot derive our understanding of pure philosophical cognition from the external world, right? Kant just said that. And he says that that's, physics sort of gives that explanation. He also said that we cannot derive our understanding of pure philosophical cognition from empirical psychology, from within the subject. Well, the question could be, well, Dr. Campbell, isn't that a contradiction? How can you say that knowledge begins with experience, right? How can you say that knowledge begins with experience, but then say that we cannot derive our knowledge of pure philosophical cognition from experience? How is that possible? It seems like he's contradicting himself. Kant is not contradicting himself. He's very clear in making a distinction, and I want to make sure, before we progress too deep into this, that we understand what he means. Okay.